Maria was right. This evening hour tells on the nerves. I wonder what her thoughts are. What is she up to? In that other hotel bedroom, I pictured her huddled up in a chair. She's not crying, but her heart's like ice. Over there, the nightfall brought a promise of happiness. But here, oh, nonsense. I've no reason for feeling this uneasiness. When a man starts something, he has no business to look back. It's in this room. Everything will be settled. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I only wanted to change the towels and fill your jug. Oh, I thought it had been done. No, the old man who works for us sometimes forgets things like that. They're only details, anyhow, but I hardly dare to tell you that you're not disturbing me. Why, I'm not sure that's allowed for our agreement. You see, you can't answer like any ordinary person, even when you want to make things easy. Sorry, I shall have to train myself. Only you must give me a little time. Yes, that's the whole point. I'm sorry, sir, that this room is not as comfortable as you might wish. It's spotlessly clean, and that is something one appreciates. Unless I'm much mistaken, you had it done up not very long ago. Quite true. But how can you tell that? Oh, by some details. Anyhow, many of our guests grumble because there isn't running water, and I can hardly blame them. Also, there should be a lamp above the bed. For some time, we've been meaning to have one installed. It must be rather a nuisance for people who are used to reading in bed to have to get up to switch the light off. That's so. I hadn't noticed. Still, this is not a very serious drawback. It's kind of you. It's kind of you to take it like that. I'm glad the defects of our hotel don't trouble you. In fact, you've seemed to notice them less than we do. I've known people whom they'd have been enough to drive away. I hope you'll let me make a remark that goes beyond our pact, and say that you're a very surprising person. One certainly doesn't expect hotel keepers to go out of their way to point out defects in the accommodation. Really, it almost looks as if you wanted to make me leave. That wasn't quite what I had in mind. But it's a fact that Mother and I are rather reluctant to have you here. I must say I noticed that you weren't doing much to keep me. Still, I can't imagine why, and you have no reason to doubt my solvency, and I hardly think I give the impression of someone with a crime on his conscience. Certainly not. If you must know, not only don't you look in the least like a criminal, but you produce the opposite effect of complete innocence. Our reasons were quite different from what you think. We intend to leave this hotel shortly, and we've been meaning every day to close down so as to start preparing for the move. That had no difficulties, and we get so few visitors, but we could never quite make up our minds. It's your coming that has made us realize how thoroughly we'd abandoned any idea of going on with the business. Am I to understand you definitely want to see me go? As I said, we can't decide. I especially can't decide. Actually, everything depends on me, and I haven't made up my mind yet, one way or the other. Please remember this. I don't want to be a burden on you, and I shall behave exactly as you wish. However, I'd like to say that it will suit me if I can stay here for 1 or 2 days. I have some problems to thrash out before moving on, and I counted on finding here the peace and quietness I need. I quite understand your desire, I assure you, and if you like, I'll reconsider the matter. Am I right in thinking you'll go back to the country from which you've come? Yes, if necessary. It's a pretty country, isn't it? Yes, a very pretty country. Is it true that there are long stretches of the coast where you never meet a soul? Quite true. There's nothing to remind you that men exist. Sometimes at dawn you find the traces of a bird's feet on the sand. Those are the only signs of life. And in the evenings. Yes? What are the evenings like? Marvelous. Indescribable. Yes, it's a lovely country. I've thought of it often and often. Travelers have told me things, and I've read what I could, and often, in the harsh, bleak spring we have here, I dream of the sea and the flowers over there. And what I picture makes me blind to everything around me. I can understand that. Spring over there grips you by the throat, and flowers burst into bloom by thousands above the white walls. If you roamed the hills that overlook my town for only an hour or so, you'd bring back in your clothes a sweet honeyed smell of yellow roses. How wonderful that must be. What we call spring here is one rose and a couple of buds struggling to keep alive in the monastery garden. And that's enough to stir the hearts of the men in this part of the world. Their hearts are as stingy as that rose tree. A breath of richer air would wilt them. They have the springtime they deserve. You're not quite fair. You have the autumn, too. What's the autumn? Second spring, when every leaf's a flower. Perhaps it's the same thing with some hearts. Perhaps they blossom if you help them with your patience. No patience for this dreary Europe, where autumn has the face of spring and the spring smells of poverty. No, I prefer to picture those other lands of our which summer bleak breaks in flame, where the winter rains flood the cities, and where things are what they are. Why are you looking at me like that? Sorry, but since we seem to have adopted our convention for the present, I don't see why I shouldn't tell you. It strikes me that for the first time you've been talking to me with, shall I say, some human feeling. Don't be too sure of that. And even if I have been, you've no cause for rejoicing. What you call human feeling is not the nicest part of me. What is human in me is what I desire, and what to get what I desire, I'd stick at nothing. I'd sweep away every obstacle on my path. I can understand that sort of violence, and I have no cause to let it frighten me, as I'm not an obstacle on your path, and I've no motive for opposing your desires. Certainly you have no reason to oppose them, but it's equally true you have no reason for furthering them, and in some cases that might bring things to a head. Why be so sure I have no reason for furthering them? Common sense tells me that, also my wish to keep you outside my plans. Ah, that means I take it that we've returned to our conventions. Yes, and we did wrong to depart from them. You can see that for yourself. Now it remains for me to thank you for having spoken of that country where you lived, and I must excuse myself for having perhaps wasted your time. Still, let me tell you, the time was not wholly wasted. Our talk roused desires in me that were beginning to fall asleep. If you're really bent on staying here, you've won your case without knowing it. When I entered this room, I had almost decided to ask you to leave, but as you see, you've played on my human feelings. Now I hope you'll stay. And so my longing for the sea and sunshine will be the gainer by it. You have a very strange way of talking. Still, if I may, and if your mother, too, has no objection, I'll stay on. My mother's desires are weaker than mine. That's only natural. She doesn't think enough about the sea and those lonely beaches to make her realize you have got to stay. So she hasn't the same motives for wanting to keep you. But at the same time, she hasn't any real strong motive for opposing me, and that will settle it. So if I've not misunderstood, one of you will let me stay for the sake of money, and the other through indifference. What more can a traveler expect? But there's truth in what you said. Well, I suppose I should be glad of that. Still, perhaps you'll let me stay that evening. That everything here strikes me as a very strange. The people and their way of speaking, really, this is a queer house. Perhaps it's only because you are behaving queerly in it. Maybe she's right, I wonder, though. Really, the one wish that girl has given me is the wish to leave at once. To return to Maria and our happiness together. I've been behaving stupidly. What a business have I to be here? No, I have a reason, a good reason. I owe duty to my mother and sister. I've neglected them too long. It's up to me to do something for them, to atone for my neglect. It's not enough in such cases to declare oneself its I. One has to make oneself loved as well. Yes, this is the room in which all will be decided. A wretchedly cold room, by the way. I can't recognize anything in it. Everything's been changed, and now it might be a bedroom in any one of those commercial hotels where men by themselves stay a night in passing. I've had experience of them. And I always used to think there was something they had to say, something like an answer or a message. Perhaps I shall get the answer here tonight. Clouding up, I see. It's always like this in a hotel bedroom. The evenings are depressing for a lonely man. I can feel it again, that vague uneasiness I used to feel in the old days, here in the hollow of my chest, like a raw place. The least movement irritates. And I know what it is. It's fear. Fear of the eternal loneliness. Fear that there is no answer. And who could there be to answer in a hotel bedroom? It's nothing. Sorry to have disturbed you. I only wanted to see if the bell was working and anyone would answer. The bell works, but he doesn't speak. That's no answer. The clouds are banking up still. Solid mass of darkness that will burst and fall upon the earth. What should I do? Which is right, Maria or my dreams? What's this? The tea you ordered. But I didn't order anything. Oh, the old man must have heard wrong. He often understands badly. Still, as the tea is here, I suppose you'll have it. It won't go on the bill. No, it isn't that, but I'm glad you brought me some tea. Very kind of you. Please, don't mention it. What we do is in our interests. I can see you're determined not to leave me any illusions, but frankly, I don't see where your interest comes in this case. It does, I assure you. Sometimes a cup of tea is enough to keep our guests here. So the prodigal son's feast is continuing. First a glass of beer, but in exchange for my money. Then a cup of tea because it encourages the visitor to stay on. But I'm to blame, too. I cannot strike the right note when I'm confronted by that girl's almost brutal frankness. I search in vain for the words that would put things right between us. Of course, our part is simpler. It's easier to find words for rebuff than those which reconcile. Oh, God, give me the power to find the right words, or else make me abandon this vain attempt in return of Maria's love. And then give me the strength once I have chosen to abide by my choice. The feast of the returning prodigal. The least I can do is to do it in honor. So I shall have played my part until I leave this place. Who's there? I'm sorry to disturb you, sir, but my daughter tells me she brought you some tea. There it is. Have you drunk it? Yes, why do you ask? Excuse me, I come to fetch the tray. I'm sorry, this cup of tea is causing so much trouble. It isn't quite that, but as a matter of fact, that tea was not meant for you. Ah, that's the explanation. It was brought without my having ordered it. Yes, that's it. It would have been better if. Anyhow, that hasn't any great importance whether you've drunk it or not. I am exceedingly sorry, I assure you, but your daughter insisted on leaving it, and I never met. I'm sorry, too. But please don't excuse yourself. It was just a mistake. Madam, yes? I must apologize again. I've just come to a decision. I think I'll leave this evening after dinner. Naturally, I'll pay for the room for the night. I quite understand you're looking surprised, but please don't imagine you are in any way responsible for my sudden change of plan. I have a great regard for you, a very great regard, but to be candid, I don't feel at ease here, and I'd rather not stay the night. That's quite all right, sir. Of course, you can do exactly as you wish, though perhaps you may change your mind between now and dinner time. Sometimes one yields to a passing impression, but later on things settle themselves and one gets used to new conditions. I doubt it, madam. However, I would not like you to believe I am leaving because I'm dissatisfied with you. On the contrary, I'm very grateful to you for welcoming me as you have done, for I must say I seem to notice you had a certain friendliness toward me. That was only natural, sir, and I'm sure you understand I had no personal reasons for showing my any ill will. That may be so, I hope so. But if I told you that, it is because I want us to part on good terms. Later on, perhaps, I'll come back. In fact, I'm sure I shall. And then things will certainly go better, and I've no doubt we shall find pleasure in meeting again. But just now I feel that I have made a mistake. I have no business being here, in a word. Though this may strike you as an odd way of putting it, I have a feeling that this house isn't for me. I know what you mean, sir, but usually one feels that sort of thing immediately. You have been rather slow, it seems to me, to discover it. I agree. But just now I'm rather at sea. I've come to Europe on some urgent business, and it's always a bit disconcerting returning to a country after years and years of absence. I trust you understand what I mean. Yes, I do understand, and I'd have liked things to turn out as you wished. But I think that as far as we're concerned, there's nothing more we can do about it. So it seems, I admit. Still, really, one can never be sure. Anyhow, I think we have done everything needed to have you stay with us. Indeed, you have, and I've nothing to complain of. The truth is that you are the first people I have met since my return, so it's natural my first taste of the difficulties ahead should come when I'm with you. Obviously, I alone am to blame for this. I haven't found my feet yet. It's often like that in life. One makes a bad start and nobody can do anything about it. In a way, it's quite true that what has happened vexes me as well. But I tell myself that after all, I've no reason to attach importance to it. Well, it's something that you share my discomfort and that you try to understand me. I can hardly tell you that how touched I am by your attitude and how much I appreciate it. What you call my attitude is quite natural, really. It's our duty to make ourselves agreeable to our guests. That's so. So it comes to this. All I owe you is an apology, and if you think fit, some compensation. You may have made our preparations gone to some expense, so it's only fair. The only preparations we've made are those we always make in such cases, and I can assure you that you can owe us no compensation. It was not on our account that I was regretting your indecision, but on yours. Oh, that doesn't matter. The great thing is that we understand each other, and I won't leave you with too bad an impression of myself. Personally, I shall not forget this house, be sure of that. And I hope that when I return, I'll be in a better mood to appreciate it. Madam, I'd like, excuse me, but my journey's tired me. I'd like anyhow to thank you for the tea and for the welcome you have given me, and I'd also like you to know that I won't leave this house feeling like a stranger. Really, sir, being thanked for something due to a mistake is always embarrassing. Yes, I must handle it quite simply, quite straightforwardly. Tomorrow I'll come here with Maria and I shall say it's I. There's nothing to prevent my making them happy. Maria was right. I can see that now. I don't like the feel of this evening. Everything seems so far away. Yes or no? All's well. No, Martha, I dislike having my hand forced like this. I'm being dragged into this act. You begin it? You began it so that I'd have no chance of drawing back. I don't like your way of riding roughshod over my reluctance. It is a way that simplifies everything. If you had given me any clear reason for your reluctance, I'd have been bound to consider it. But as you couldn't make up your mind, it was right for me to help you by taking the first step. I know, of course, that it does not greatly matter, this man or some other, today or some later day, tonight or tomorrow. It had to come to that. Nonetheless, I don't feel pleased about it. Come, mother, think of tomorrow instead and let's get busy. Our freedom will begin when this night ends. How soundly he's sleeping! He's sleeping as they all slept. Now let's start. Wait a little, please. Isn't it strange how helpless and defenseless men look when they're asleep? It's an attitude they assume. They always wake up eventually. No, men aren't quite so remarkable as you seem to think, but of course you, Martha, don't know what I mean. No, mother, I don't. But I don't know what we are wasting time. Oh, there's no such hurry. On the contrary, this is the moment we can relax. Now that the main thing's done, why work yourself up like this? Is it really worthwhile? Nothing's worthwhile. The moment one talks about it, it's better to get on with the work in hand and ask no questions of oneself. Let's sit down, Martha. Here, beside him? Certainly, why not? He has entered on a sleep that will take him far, and it's not likely he will wake up and inquire what we're doing here. As for the rest of the world, it stops short at that closed door. Why shouldn't we enjoy this little breathing space in peace? You're joking, and it's my turn to tell you I don't appreciate your way of talking. You're wrong. I don't feel in the least like joking, merely showing calmness while you are letting your nerves run wild. Now, Martha, sit down. And look at that man who's even more innocent in sleep than in his talk. He, anyhow, is through with the world. From now on, everything will be easy for him. He will pass from a dreamful sleep into dreamless sleep. And what for others is cruel wrench will be for him no more than a protracted rest. Innocence has the sleep that innocence deserves. And this man, anyhow, had no reason for hating, so I'm glad he's being spared any pain. But I've no reason either for looking at him, and I think it's a bad idea of yours staring like that, a man whom presently you'll have to carry. When the hour comes, we shall carry him, but we still have time in hand, and perhaps it won't be such a bad idea for him at any rate. If we look at him attentively, for it's not too late yet. Sleep isn't death. Yes, Martha, look at him. He is living through a moment when he has no say in his fate, when his hopes of life are made over to indifferent hands. Let these hands stay as they are, folded in my lap until the dawn, and without his knowing anything, he'll have entered on a new lease of life. But if they move toward him and form a hard ring round his ankles, he will lie in an unremembered grave forever. Mother, you're forgetting that all nights end, and we have much to do. First, we must look through the papers in his pockets and carry him downstairs. Then we'll have to put out all the lights and keep watch in the doorway, as long as need be. Yes, there's much for us to do, and there's where we are in different case from his. He at least is free now on the burden of his life. He has done with the anxiety of making decisions, with thoughts of work that must be done, with strain and stress. A cross is lifted from his shoulders, the cross of that inner life which allows of no repose, no weakness, no relaxing. At this moment he exacts nothing of himself, and old and tired as I am, I almost think that there lies happiness. We've no time for wondering where happiness lies when I have kept watch as long as need be. There there will still be much to do. We shall have to go down to the river and make sure some drunk man isn't sleeping on the bank. Then we'll have to carry him down there as quickly as we can. And you know the effort that means. We shall have to do it in several stages, and once we are on the bank, swing him out as far as possible into the midstream. And let me remind you again that nights don't last forever. Yes, all that lies before us, and the mere thought of it makes me tired with a tiredness that has lasted so long that my old blood can't cope with it. And meanwhile, this man has no suspicion. He is enjoying his repose. If we let him wake, he'll have to start life again. And from what I've seen of him, I know he is much like other men and cannot live in peace. Perhaps that is why we must take him there and hand him over to the mercy of the dark water. But it's a sad thing. So much effort should be needed to rid a man of his follies and put him in the way of peace. I can only think, Mother, that your wits are wandering. I repeat, we have much to do. Once he's thrown in, we shall have to efface the marks on the river bank, blur our footsteps on the path, destroy his clothes and baggage, make him vanish from the face of the earth, in fact. Time's passing, and soon it will be too late to carry all this out with the composure that it needs. Really, I cannot understand what has come over you to be sitting at that man's beside and staring at him, though you can hardly see him, and persisting in this absurd, useless talk. Tell me, Martha, did you know that he meant to leave this evening? No, I didn't. But if I'd known, it wouldn't have changed anything. Once I made up my mind. He told me that just now, and I didn't know how to answer him. Ah, so you had a talk with him. Yes, when you said you'd brought his tea, I came here. I'd have stopped him from drinking it if I had been in time. And it was once I knew the beginning had been made, I felt we'd better let things take their course. Really, it hadn't much importance. If you still feel like that, there's no reason for dawdling here. So please get up from that chair and help me finish off this business, which is getting on my nerves. Yes, I suppose I'll end by helping you, only you might allow a few minutes more to an old woman whose blood doesn't flow as fast as yours. You've been on the rush ever since this morning, and you expect me to keep pace with you. Even that man there couldn't manage it. Before he had framed the thought of leaving, he drunk the tea you gave him. If you must know, it was he who made up my mind for me. You talked me into sharing your reluctance, but then he started telling me about those countries where I've always longed to go, and by working on my feelings, hardened my heart against him. Thus, innocence is rewarded. And yet, he'd come to understand. He said he felt this house was not his home. Of course it is not his home. For that matter, it is nobody's home. No one will ever find warmth or comfort or contentment in this house. Had he realized that sooner, he'd have been spared and spared us too. He would have spared our having to teach him that this room is made for sleeping in and this world for dying in. Come, Mother, and for the sake of the God you sometimes call on, let's have done with it. Very well, Martha, we'll begin, but I've a feeling that tomorrow's dawn will never come.